Welcome to my channel. Thank you for watching and supporting our content. If this video touches your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with others. He was born into a world that never planned to let him win. The year was 1847, and in the American South the soil was rich, but mercy was poor. From his very first breath, life announced its cruelty without hesitation. He entered the world not in celebration, but in exhaustion. His mother's body shaking with weakness, her eyes hollow from years of labor that never belonged to her. There was no doctor, no warmth, no whispered prayers of hope. Only silence, broken by the distant sound of chains and the low moan of a woman who already knew what kind of future waited for her child. He never knew freedom as a concept. He only knew rules that were not written for his protection, laws that did not see him as human, and mornings that began before the sun out of fear rather than purpose. Hunger was his first teacher. It taught him how to endure emptiness, how to quiet the ache in his stomach, how to watch others eat without letting resentment show on his face. Cold followed closely behind, teaching him how to sleep with trembling limbs and still rise when commanded. His mother tried to hide the truth from him when he was young. She told him stories in the dark, soft, broken stories about rivers that never ended and skies where no one could be owned. Her voice was weak, but her words carried strength. She would touch his head and tell him that pain was not the end of the road, only a part of it, even. Then, she knew she could not protect him forever. The world outside their whispered moments was merciless, and it was waiting. His father was more memory than man. Taken away before the boy could understand what loss meant, his absence became a permanent shadow in the house. Sometimes the boy imagined his father's face in strangers, wondering if he was still alive or if his bones now rested beneath the same soil that demanded endless work from the living. That unanswered question planted something deep inside him, a quiet understanding that life could take everything without explanation. By the time he was old enough to work, childhood had already ended. His hands learned pain early, blistering under tools too heavy for his body. Each mistake was punished, not corrected. Each question was answered with anger. He learned quickly that silence was safer than curiosity, obedience safer than honesty. But inside his mind, something refused to submit. While his body bent, his thoughts wandered. He watched people closely, memorizing patterns, learning moods, understanding power without ever holding it. Nights were the hardest. When the world finally grew quiet, the weight of the day came, crashing down. His body ached, but his mind would not rest. He listened to others cry softly into the darkness, listened to prayers that sounded more like last requests than hope. Some nights, despair felt so heavy it pressed the air from his chest. In those moments, giving up felt natural, even logical. What future could exist in a place designed to crush it? Yet something strange happened at darkness. Instead of surrender, a stubborn promise formed inside him. It was not loud or dramatic. It did not feel heroic. It was simply a refusal to let pain decide the meaning of his life. He did not know how or when, but he believed that surviving each day mattered, that continuing to move forward, even without hope, was itself an act of resistance. He began to notice small things others ignored, how some men lost control when angered, how cruelty often masked fear, how knowledge, even small pieces of it, created quiet power. He listened when others spoke, even when their words were meant to humiliate him. He stored everything away. Pain sharpened his awareness instead of dulling it. There were moments when despair nearly won, days when his mother returned so broken that then her stories disappeared, nights when he wondered if endurance was just another form of slow death. But each time, he remembered her words, spoken with failing breath. Never let the world convince you that your suffering is meaningless. He did not understand them fully then, but they anchored him when nothing else could. The system around him thrived on convincing people they were nothing. Numb. Ease were replaced with labels. Dreams were treated as crimes. The goal was not only to control bodies, but to erase belief. Many fell into that trap, their eyes losing light long before their lives ended. He watched it happen and feared it, but he also learned from it. He learned what surrender looked like, and vowed never to wear that expression. As years passed, his pain matured with him. It stopped. Paired being raw and became something heavier, something colder. But it also became purposeful. He realized that survival itself was a skill, one he was mastering daily. While others measured success by comfort, his success was simply waking up and continuing. Each day he endured was a quiet victory against a world that wanted him erased. He did not dream of wealth or power. His dreams were smaller, sharper, more dangerous. He dreamed of choice, of standing somewhere without fear, of deciding his own direction, even if the path remained difficult. Those dreams kept him alive when food could not, when kindness did not exist. The world saw him as insignificant, replaceable, invisible. History books would not record his early years. No one marked his suffering as important. But deep within him, something unbreakable was forming. A foundation built not on privilege or opportunity, but on endurance, observation, and an unyielding refusal to disappear. This was how his journey began, not with hope, but with persistence, not with encouragement, but with pain. In a land shaped by injustice, he learned the first and most important lesson of his life: never lose heart, even when your heart is wounded. Forget the pain enough to keep walking forward, because one day, that pain would no longer chain him, it would carry him. The years that followed did not soften him, they sharpened him. Time moved forward, but mercy did not arrive with it. Each season felt heavier than the last, as if the world were testing how much a human soul could endure before collapsing. By now, pain was no longer king. It was expected. What surprised him was how easily cruelty became routine, how ordinary suffering looked when everyone around you was also breaking. He learned early that hope was dangerous. Those who hoped too openly were the first to be crushed. Dreams spoken aloud invited punishment, so he hid his thoughts behind a quiet face, his emotions buried beneath obedience. But inside his mind remained awake. He watched men grow powerful on the misery of others, and noticed how quickly that power crumbled when fear crept in. He saw that cruelty was not strength, it was weakness dressed loudly. His body bore the cost of these realizations. Long hours under the sun carved exhaustion into his bones. Injuries were ignored unless they threatened productivity. Hunger returned often, sharper than before, because now he understood what it meant. He had seen enough to know that life was not meant to be this way, even if history insisted otherwise. That awareness made every injustice burn deeper. There were moments when the weight became unbearable, days when anger filled his chest so completely that he feared it would spill out and destroy him. Rage was dangerous, but so was silence. He lay, ended to balance both, to let neither rule him. He turned his anger inward, shaping it into discipline. Every insult became motivation. Every humiliation became proof that he must survive, if only to deny his oppressors the satisfaction of his collapse. Loss followed him closely. Friends disappeared without warning, their names erased as if they had never existed. Some were sold away, their cries wallowed by distance. Others were buried quietly, their lives ending without ceremony or justice. Each loss chipped away at his heart, teaching him how fragile life truly was. He learned not to attach too tightly, not because he lacked love, but because love made the pain sharper when it was taken. Still, even in grief, he observed. He noticed how despair spread like disease, how once a person rendered internally, their body soon followed. He saw eyes grow empty, backs bend permanently, voices fall silent. That sight frightened him more than punishment ever could. It showed him the true danger, not chains, not hunger, but the moment a person believes they are already defeated. So he made a silent vow, no matter how much he suffered, he would never let his mind kneel. His body could be owned, but his thoughts would remain free. That decision did not bring comfort, but it brought clarity. He began to treat survival as a craft, something to be practiced and perfected. He paid attention to detail, to timing, to patience. He learned when to speak and when silence was power. He also learned from unexpected sources. Stories passed quietly between people late at night, warnings discreet. Said as gossip, lessons hidden inside laughter. Knowledge became currency, understanding human nature became protection. He learned that people revealed their intentions in small ways, in tone, in habit, in carelessness. Pain made him perceptive, and perception made him dangerous in ways no one noticed. The years tested his resolve relentlessly. There were nights when exhaustion overwhelmed even high. Strongest defenses. Nights when he questioned whether endurance itself was a kind of slow surrender. During those moments, memories of his mother returned, her quiet strength, her refusal to curse the world despite everything it had taken. She had not survived to see change, but she had survived long enough to teach him how. He realized then that success did not always look like escape. Sometimes, success was simply refusing to become what the world expected him to be, broken, bitter, obedient in spirit. He refused to let cruelty shape his character. Instead, it shaped his awareness. Instead of turning cold, he became controlled. Instead of becoming reckless, he became strategic. As time passed, his reputation formed quietly, not as someone defiant, but as someone reliable, observant, unshaken. People underestimated him, and he allowed it. Underestimation was safety. It gave him space to think, to plan, to wait. He understood that survival was not about speed, it was about timing. The world continued its brutality without apology. Laws changed slowly, if at all. Promises of reform felt distant and fragile, but beneath the surface, something was shifting. Tension filled the air. Fear existed on both sides of power now. He sensed it before he could name it. History was stirring, and with it, uncertainty. Even so, the struggle within him remained the hardest battle. Fighting despair required daily effort. There was no victory that lasted forever, only resolve renewed each morning. He learned that strength was not loud. It did not announce itself. It showed up quietly again and again, when giving up would have been easier. He stopped asking why this life had chosen him. That question led nowhere. Instead, he asked how. How to endure another day. How to protect his mind. How to turn suffering into preparation. Those questions kept him alive. Pain had not destroyed him. It had disciplined him. It had stripped away illusions and left behind something sharper, leaner, unbreakable. While others measured their worth by what they were given, he measured his by what he survived. The years that tried to kill hope did not succeed. They only taught him its true form. Hope was not a feeling, it was a decision to continue, to adapt, to wait for the moment when endurance would finally meet opportunity. And though he could not yet see that moment, he was prepper. Ring for it, every single day. Change did not arrive like a promise fulfilled. It came like a storm, sudden, violent, and indifferent to who survived it. By the time the old order began to crack, he had already learned not to trust moments of chaos. Chaos often hurt the powerless first. Whispers of transformation traveled faster than truth, carried by fear and hope in equal measure. Some celebrated. Too early. Others hid, expecting betrayal. He did neither. He waited. The world around him trembled as structures once considered eternal began to weaken. Authority grew nervous. Rules were enforced more harshly, not less. Those in control sensed the shift and tightened their grip, hoping force could delay the inevitable. For people like him, this was the most dangerous time, when power feels eatened. It lashes out blindly. Survival now required even greater caution. Then came the collapse. Not clean, not just, not merciful. It left behind confusion instead of clarity. One morning, he stood in a world that claimed to be new, yet looked painfully familiar. Freedom was spoken of loudly, but delivered quietly and unevenly. Papers were signed far away, while hunger remained close. Celebrat. Ion echoed in cities, while uncertainty ruled the countryside. He was free, they said. Free, but with nothing. No land, no education, no protection, no guidance. just a past full of wounds and a future full of unanswered questions. Many believed freedom would instantly heal them. When it didn't, despair returned with greater force. Some wandered aimlessly. Some fell into old habits. Some gave up. Entirely. Unable to rebuild after years of being broken. He stood still for a long time, watching it all unfold. This moment, the one everyone talked about, did not feel triumphant. It felt fragile, like standing on unfamiliar ground that could collapse at any step. But beneath that fear, something else stirred. Possibility. Dangerous, uncertain possibility. He chose movement, not because he knew where he was going, but because standing still felt like death. He followed work wherever it appeared. Dirty, exhausting labor that others avoided. Roads, fields, construction sites, kitchens. He did not complain. He did not demand. He learned. Every job taught him something new, how money moved, how people negotiated, how trust was built and broken. Failure followed him closely, so did rejection. Doors closed often, sometimes violently. Hunger returned, but it felt different now. It was no longer enforced, it was circumstantial. That difference mattered. Pain with no choice is crushing. Pain chosen in pursuit of something greater is bearable. He slept wherever he could, ate whenever he could, and worked until his body begged for rest. Still, he moved forward. People looked at him and saw only what he lacked. He allowed them to. Underestimation remained his greatest shield. While others argued loudly about what they deserved, he focused quietly on what he could build. He saved small amounts, learned letters when possible, listened to conversations not meant for him. Knowledge remained his weapon of choice. Failure tested him repeatedly. He trusted the wrong people, lost what little he had. Made decisions driven by desperation instead of patience. Each mistake hurt deeply because he had so little margin for error. There were nights when he wondered if endurance had finally reached its limit. Nights when the weight of the past pressed so heavily on his chest that breathing felt like work. But he remembered something crucial. He had survived worse with less. That memory ensured him. It reminded him that progress did not have to be fast to be real. So he adjusted. He learned to pace himself, to think long-term in a world obsessed with immediate relief. He stopped chasing miracles and started building habits. Discipline replaced urgency. Strategy replaced anger. Opportunities appeared quietly, disguised as inconvenience. A job no one wanted. A responsibility others avoided. A risk that scared everyone else. He took them, one by one. Not because they guaranteed success, but because they offered experience. Experience compounded slowly, invisibly, until one day it began to show. People started to notice. Not dramatically, but subtly. His reliability, his calm under pressure, his ability to solve problems without drawing attention to himself. Trust grew fragile. At first, then stronger. With trust came chances. Small, easily lost chances that required consistency more than brilliance. He seized none of them recklessly. Pain had taught him patience. Every step forward was measured, deliberate. He refused shortcuts that demanded compromise of character. He had seen too many people escape one form of suffering, only to be trapped by another. He wanted more than survival now. He wanted control over his own direction. The turning point did not announce itself. It arrived quietly, disguised as routine. One decision compounded with another. One connection led to another. Suddenly, the ground beneath him felt more stable, not safe but stable, enough to stand without fear of immediate collapse. With stability came reflection. For the first time he allowed himself to look backward without breaking. The years of pain no longer consumed him. They informed him. They explained his instincts, his caution, his resilience. What once felt like wasted suffering now revealed itself as preparation. He understood then that history had not spared him, but it had shaped him. Where others hesitated, he acted. Where others panicked, he planned. Where others broke, under pressure, he focused. His past had given him tools no school could teach. Success did not arrive suddenly. It unfolded gradually, almost reluctantly. Income became consistent. Work became meaningful. Respect replaced suspicion. He was no longer invisible, but he remained humble. He remembered how quickly fortune could change, how fragile progress was in a world still learning how to be fair. Yet something fundamental had shifted. He was no longer reacting to life. He was directing it. The man who once survived day by day now thought in years. The boy who had known only obedience now made decisions that affected others. With that power came responsibility, and he did not take it lightly. He remembered every face lost along the way, every voice silenced too early. Their absence fueled his determination to build something that would last. Pain had not disappeared. It had transformed. It no longer haunted him. It motivated him. It no longer weakened him. It sharpened him. He carried it not as a burden but as proof. This was the moment no one saw coming, not the collapse of chains but the rise of purpose, not the end of suffering but the beginning of mastery over it. The world had tried to define him by his worst circumstances. Instead, he defined himself by what he became after them. He had walked through darkness long enough to understand its shape. And now, standing on uncertain but open ground, he was ready for the final truth. Success born from suffering is not luck. It is earned slowly, painfully, and permanently. Time revealed its rewards slowly, almost reluctantly, as if testing whether he would remain humble once hardship loosened its grip. Success did not arrive as applause or sudden wealth. It arrived as stability, quiet, uncelebrated, but powerful. The kind of stability that allows a man to sleep without fear, to wake with purpose instead of dread. For someone who had known nothing but uncertainty, this was a revolution in itself. His work began to speak for him long before his name did. People trusted what he built because it endured. Where others chased rapid gain, he invested in patience. He understood that anything created without discipline would collapse under pressure. His past had taught him this lesson brutally, and he honored it in everything he touched. Each decision carried memory within it. The memory of hunger, of loss, of nights spent wondering whether tomorrow would come at all. With success came visibility. Thank you, and visibility brought its own dangers. Old prejudices did not disappear simply because laws changed or fortunes improved. Suspicion followed him into rooms he had never been allowed to enter before. Some questioned his presence, others his intentions. He learned to navigate these spaces carefully, not shrinking from them, but not provoking them either. Strength, he had learned, was most effective when it was calm. He did not forget where he came from. That forgetting, he believed, was the true failure. Instead, he carried his history openly, not as a weapon, but as a foundation. When others spoke of progress as if it erased the past, he understood the cost of such thinking. Progress meant nothing if it denied the suffering that made it necessary. His life was proof that survival alone was not enough. Meaning had to follow. He began to help others quietly without ceremony. Not out of obligation, but understanding. He recognized the signs of despair in others because he had lived inside it. He offered opportunity where he could, guidance when asked, silence when that was what someone needed most. He knew that not everyone could be saved, but he also knew that one steady hand change a life's direction. Power, when it finally reached him, did not intoxicate him. He had seen what unchecked power did to people. Instead, it made him cautious. Every choice he made considered its consequences not just for himself, but for those who stood behind. Those still struggling, still unheard. He refused to become another chapter of cruelty disguised as success. At night, and the world finally slowed. Memories returned. Faces of those who never made it this far. Voices lost to history. Their absence was not a wound anymore, but a responsibility. He carried them forward in his work, in his ethics, in the way he treated those with less power than himself. He understood that his success did not belong to him alone. It belonged to every pain that had shaped him. The world began to tell his story, though never fully. Some parts were softened, others ignored. History often prefers clean narratives, heroes without scars. But he knew the truth. that every achievement rested on years of invisible suffering, that resilience was not heroic, it was necessary, that hope was not something he had always possessed, but something he had chosen repeatedly, even when it felt irrational. He spoke rarely about his past, not because he was ashamed, but because he knew words could never fully contain it. Instead, he let his life speak, let consistency prove what speeches could not, let integrity answer questions before they were asked. He became a living contradiction to the beliefs that once tried to erase him. In moments of reflection, he realized that success had not changed who he was. It had revealed him. The same discipline that kept him alive now kept him grounded. The same awareness that once protected him now guided him. Pain had not disappeared from his story. It had been transformed into purpose. He no longer measured success by comfort alone. He measured it by impact, by how many people walked, taller because they had seen him walk first, by how many barriers cracked simply because he stood where he was never meant to stand. His existence itself became a quiet challenge to history's cruelty. The journey had taught him one final truth: despair is patient, but so is endurance. The world may break a person repeatedly, but if the heart refuses to surrender, something extraordinary can emerge. From the ruins, not perfection, not justice in full, but progress, real, earned, irreversible progress. He had once been a child born into shadows, told without words that his life would mean nothing. Now, standing firmly in the light he had fought for, he understood the deepest lesson of all. Pain does not define the end of a story. Persistence does. And so his life became a message, spoken without shouting, written without ink. Never lose heart. Bury despair, not yourself. Walk forward even when your chest aches with memory. Because one day, the very suffering meant to destroy you will become the reason you rise, and history, no matter how dark, will be forced to remember your name.